Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us in our Day 1 of Joint Seminar with Healis Autism Center. I'm Yuan, a student from SIT Project IncluSGive, and I'll be with you running through the entire event today. So together with Healis Autism Center, we have prepared a seminar for you, and it will be split into 2 days, with today's topic being caregivers in Matter 2. Here's a brief run-through of our timeline for today. Firstly, to get to know us better, I'll be introducing to you the team of SIT students and the speakers from Healis. Following that, the first speaker will share with you on the importance of caregivers' involvement in early intervention and ways to prevent caregivers burnout. This will be followed by our Q&A session for the first topic. For those who have joined us earlier may have seen the slideshow with steps on how to answer the questions after each topic was explained. For those who have missed it, I'll be doing a quick run-through again in a short while. So after the first topic's Q&A, we'll be then taking a short break before moving on to the second topic. So who is SIT Project IncluSGive? We are a service learning group formed by 18 students from Singapore Institute of Technology and are currently in collaboration with SG Enable to reach out to caregivers and care recipients by creating events and activities like this. And with me today are my 4 other team members. Our team's aims and objectives are to provide caregivers with respite, to strengthen engagement with caregivers through events and activities, to provide support to caregivers by meeting their needs, and to empower caregivers by imparting essential skills to them. So in collaboration with us is Healis Autism Center, who is known to being the most effective ABA/BB treatment center in Singapore. They are also an advocate in neurodiversity and individuality for an individual with autism, with the aim on not only helping them to achieve normalization in communication, they also try to help them in reaching their fullest potential in their talents while shaping their character and promoting mental wellness during therapy. 2 speakers will be presenting to you today, with their first topic by Kara, a senior therapist, and the second by Yi Zhuang, a clinical director. So before we begin, here's a quick run-through for the Q&A. We have allocated time for the Q&A after each topic. So if you would like to ask during the Q&A session, you may type down the question in the Q&A toolbox below. So some general ethics before we begin. Firstly, do not use the chat box to chat with either the panelists or the attendees about matters that are not pertaining to this event. And during the Q&A, 1 question will be answered and asked at a time, so kindly wait for the SIT Project IncluSGive members to facilitate the session. In the event if your question is missed out, do inform us via the chat box. And as there is a time limit, if your question is unanswered by the end of the seminar, do note that we'll also be compiling the questions and we'll get back to you as soon as possible via email. Now I'll be inviting the first speaker, Kara. Kara, may you please unmute yourself, turn on your camera and share your screen.
All right, hello everyone. So can you guys hear me? You can give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, All right, everyone. So we are really glad to have you guys here today to learn about caregivers. My name is Kara, and I'm a senior therapist from Healis Autism Center. So before we jump in, I would like to actually send my thanks to the students of SIT as well for liaising with us and making this happen during this COVID situation. For today's sharing, we'll be discussing on the importance of caregivers' involvement in an early intervention program and the importance towards it, and also about caregiver burnout. So let's jump in. All right. Now, what do we mean by caregivers' involvement? At Healis, we support in adopting a team approach method. We would like to train, encourage, and empower our caregivers to take part in engaging of the positive behaviors rather than the negative behaviors. Now, as caregivers, how do you do this? Firstly, what we suggest is understanding the goals in your child's IEP, the individualized educational program. So in the educational program, usually there'll be a set of goals. And what you can do is to get a better understanding. You can ask questions about how certain goals will be done, and also the timeline of the goals that have been set. So you can gauge the timeline and also observe the pace and progress of your child's development. Secondly is picking up basic strategies to use on a day-to-day basis. What do I mean by that? For example, working on eye contact, which is something that we usually share with caregivers to work on to help the child increase the pace of his or her progress. Next will be observations and updates for the therapist. So for example, if you observe a new behavior, whether it's a positive or a negative one, letting the therapist know will help you and your child as well, because the therapist will guide you in how you can create more opportunities for the positive behavior and also advice on how to reduce the negative behaviors that you notice. All right, so next while you guys are doing this, all of this as caregivers and so much more, we as caregivers may succumb to stress. Now, why the reason I say we is because I have an older brother with autism as well, and for the past few years, I've been his caregiver. As every child with special needs is different, every caregiver struggle is different as well. But what we have to do is acknowledge that caring for someone with special needs can be extremely tiring and stressful as well. So today, we're going to talk a bit more on caregivers burnout. Now, we're going to discuss on what it is, some strategies for preventing, identifying the signs of caregiver burnout, and also ways of coping it. Now, what is caregiver burnout? It is a physical state. It is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. The change is usually from a very positive and caring attitude to more towards a negative and unconcerned attitude. It occurs when caregivers don't get the help that they need and they take too much on themselves. So whether it is physically or emotionally. Next, how can we prevent this? Now, firstly, what we would suggest is understanding is key. And what do we mean by that? By gaining more knowledge, as it helps to ease your stress. We have free resources such as articles to read up at our Healis website. For example, topics such as teaching of money concept, strategies on managing aggressive behaviors, or sending your child to a mainstream school setting, and tips and strategies to handle that. Next is long-term care planning. How do we go about this, you may ask? We can work on developing your child's abilities and strengths through the early intervention program and therapy programs that you have seeked out, thus allowing your child to be more independent and putting your mind at ease as well. Next would be financial planning and community support. Now, what do I mean by financial planning? It is more towards knowing the cost that you need to invest in so that it can be a step-by-step process. And also for community support, seeking out help from services such as SG Enable. And finally, self-care, making time for yourself and doing things that you love. Now, what are the certain signs of burnout? Feelings of resentment, constant fatigue, emotional exhaustion, changes in sleep and appetite. Sometimes you just feel like you want to sleep more, or you're sleeping less, or sometimes you don't feel like eating as much as you usually would. And changes in your mood, you're feeling usually more irritable and you're quite low in your moods. Neglecting yourself physically, nutritionally, and emotionally as well. And also withdrawing from social contact, meaning hanging out with your friends or family members, you tend to withdraw yourself from that. And also feeling helpless. Now, how do we overcome this? Here are some strategies that you can try out. So first of all, we've got care for yourself. Caring for someone with special needs is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I've seen it personally with my parents dealing with my older brother. So caregivers need to pace themselves to avoid the burnout. Realize that you have your own needs and you guys have to make the conscious effort to meet them as well. For example, not skipping your meals, going for a walk, or just making sure you get good rest. Next would be focus on the positives, both whether it's emotional or the experiences as well. So not just focusing on the challenges that you go through on a day-to-day basis with your child with special needs, but you try to focus that even though there will be bad days, in those bad days and bad moments, there'll be tiny milestones that can bring up your joy as well. Like maybe your child might be having a bad day, having a meltdown, but then eventually you see your child communicating or trying to share with you how he or she might be feeling. Next, we have appreciating the strengths and unique attributes of the person with special needs. Now, we always, at Healis, we're always supporting our children with special needs. We are always talking about appreciating their positives and their strengths. So we always encourage them, whatever their talents may be, whatever they might be, whatever they would enjoy doing. And also taking a break, tapping on maybe extended family, friends, or even social services such as student or adult care centers. Like for me, sometimes I would turn to my friends and sometimes ask them for help when I need some help with my brothers. Whether he has an appointment or something, some of my friends would come down and help out as well. And that really takes a load off as a caregiver on my end. Next, band together. So banding together, like the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. So do not be afraid to seek help from anyone in the public as well. There are moments that I do seek when I bring my brother for his appointments or when I bring him out for shopping as well. Sometimes I seek the public's assistance as well, and that's okay to ask for help. Knowing the services that are available. So what do I mean by this? I mean not only just the intervention programs or the therapy programs, but more towards professional programs such as social workers, more towards events that include more special needs as well. So you can ask them, and remember, don't be afraid to seek help. And joining a support group. So finding comfort and support from other special need parents or caregivers as well. For example, in Facebook, there is a group called Singapore Special Needs and Parents, where they share tips, they share resources, and they also share support for each other, which is really good to see. And it really helps out in caregivers, because sharing what you might be going through, maybe there might be another parent or a caregiver that's going through the same thing as well. And you guys can share resources or certain strategies that you might have used that have helped you. You might share it with other parents. And it's really good to be supportive as well during this time. And also we have recognizing that most of the stigma may be coming from within. Now, the concept of self-stigma, meaning that the public is actually kinder than you think. So sometimes even when I'm bringing up my brother for his, maybe for his haircut, the public, they are much kinder. The barber over there, nearby my place, he loves helping out. He will always say, you know, it's okay, you can go shopping first. We'll handle your brother for you with his haircut. And that really takes the load off for me as well. And next, doing some future care planning. So this may be done with the help of professionals such as social workers. And SG Enable has a great platform to turn to, as they have informations on services available for different causes. So like for maybe early intervention, for the youth, and for the adults as well. Now, before I end my sharing, I would like to remind you that caregivers out there, you guys are doing a great job thus far. Every day when I look at my parents and my clients' families, I'm always in awe at how you guys do so much for your special needs child. Remember that it's okay to have bad days, and let's not beat ourselves up about it. Thank you very much, and let's go into the Q&A session.
Thank you, Kara, for the very informative presentation. We will now move into the Q&A segment. To ask a question, you may click on the Q&A tool found on the toolbar, and you may key in your questions, which can be viewed by other participants as well. Given the time constraints, you will likely not be able to address all the questions, but do be rest assured that our speakers will do their best to answer as many as you can. So I understand that currently there are no questions in the toolbar. Oh, there's one? Okay. Okay, so one question is from an anonymous attendee for Kara. So what should I do to reduce stress during this COVID period?
All right. So what we can do to reduce the stress? So right now during the COVID period, especially like during the lockdown, even when my brother he was at home as well and he wasn't able to get up, so he wasn't able to go for his walks. There's a lot of pent up energy as well. So there were a few moments where he had his meltdowns as well. So as a caregiver, what I did was that I provided a different setting for him at home. I gave him different activities to do, probably like helping me with cutting or packing things. With kids, what we can do is that instead of increasing on screen time, I would suggest more towards physical activities within indoors as well. And also remember to get the child to adapt as well. Maybe teaching them how to use the mask. That'll be a fun activity as well. Like you can get a soft toy and then you can show videos on how to wear a mask, and you can guide the child like, oh, let's put the mask for the teddy bear. What about your turn right now? So we can guide them, and it also helps them learn about adapting to wearing a mask, and it also is a fun activity as well for them. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kara. I think that actually answers also the second question, which is on especially the fear of my child contracting the virus since he does not want to use the mask.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the other questions. Hi, what if you have reached a stage where you have tried all strategies, but nothing seems to work? You feel stuck and helpless.
For me, I feel at that point of time is when I would start to seek more help. I would go to the services that are available. I would try to find out more information, and then I will ask for more advice towards the current situation that I would be in, and I would wait for the professionals' advice as well.
Okay, so another question is how to improve my child's social interaction skill. I think this is quite a big issue for that causes a lot of stress for caregivers. Yeah.
True. And I think during this period, what we can do is that for the caregivers involvement, what I would do is that we can do a simple circle time activity, like maybe like singing songs, like a hello song activity, and then you can do a story activity which is linked up to a simple fine motor activity, like maybe after the story of Three Little Pigs, we're going to create a pig craft with the paper plate. Yeah, so these are things that help with the social interaction between you and your child, and you can also get the sibling as well, if there is, to join as well, so that there's more social interaction. So these are things that you can try out at home.
Okay, so next question. How did you come to accept your brother's diagnosis? My child was recently diagnosed with ASD, and it has been very difficult for me and my family to embrace this fact.
Okay, so for me, when I was young, I was actually quite confused. I didn't understand what autism was, and I didn't know what was happening. I knew my brother was a bit different at that time. For my parents, how they dealt with it was that I think they had this very happy-go-lucky attitude that they had, and somehow it spilled over onto me as well. So they were very accepting of my brother. They tried whatever strategies that the teachers would come and help, and they would also try bringing my brother out. Like, even though he's different, they still brought him out into society. They were okay that even though he was having a meltdown outside, they would just do their best to handle it, and they're always reminded that, you know, even though they had a bad day, it's not a bad life. I think that's the line that I learned from my parents. And for me, how I learned to accept it was I had a teacher from a Rainbow Center who used to teach him, and she would come in to do house visits. And what she did with me was that she got me to interact with my brother a lot more. And that's when I understand that, hey, my brother is a bit different, but you know, it's okay. I'll try to guide him and help him in whatever way I can. So that's how I think me and my family embraced it. But of course, it's a process. It will take time as well. It's not an immediate, oh, I've accepted it. It's a step-by-step process.
Thank you, Kara. The next question is, are there such things as foods that improve mood for me and my child? I always see such things on Facebook, but I'm not sure about it.
Okay, maybe this one, what I feel is that with regards to food, it depends on the child as well, because I remember when growing up, my brother wasn't a fan of eating meat. So he was quite strongly a vegetarian as well. But slowly we introduced it for him. Somehow it helped with his moods as well. But I wouldn't say that certain foods would help with the moods and all. So maybe Yi Zhuang, would you like to add on anything on this?
Hi. Hi everyone, Yi Zhuang from Healis. So with regards to food, like what Kara said, it depends on every child. So for example, sugar intake. So this is something that affects many children. So sometimes you can observe your child. So for example, if after eating high sugar meal, does your child suddenly become more hyperactive? He's struggling with focusing on tasks. He starts running around or jumping, or he gets very cranky. So then you can try to reduce sugar and see if for a few days, if you stop giving high sugar food to your child, does it help? So it does not mean that sugar affects every child. So we have clients whereby, they're not affected by sugar intake at all. They might be affected by gluten. So some of them, they are on gluten-free diet, but it's not recommended for all children as well, because it depends on whether your child responds to the food. It's just like all of us as well. So all of us, we respond to food very differently. Some of us, we just eating a little bit, maybe we some people, they can eat a lot, but then they don't gain any weight. So I think it's the same for children with autism. Yeah, so kind of like it's also better if you can seek advice from maybe doctors or professionals like dietitians or nutritionists on this, so they can kind of help you with it instead of trying to figure it out on your own.
All right, thank you so much, Yi Zhuang.
No problem.
Okay, so there are two more questions. The next one is, I'm worried that my son will hurt other people if I ask others to help in caring him. Do you have this worry so far?
For me, when growing up with my brother, yes, there was aggression involved. The aggressive behaviors were there. So I think what my parents and I did was that, yes, we tried to handle it on our own, but then we also, sometimes when it got a bit overwhelming, especially like during family events or when we're outside in public, we did seek help from people as well. And people are more forthcoming actually. So don't worry about it. When people come to help you, they are truly doing it from their heart. So don't worry about asking for help. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is, I'm worried about my child entering a mainstream school. Not sure if he can adapt well.
Okay, so with regards to mainstream school, what I do know of is that they have allied educators. So allied educators do come in into the classroom once in a while to check on children with any special needs or anything, and then they help guide them as well. And also you can also turn to professional services like shadows as well, shadow teachers, if you need more help in getting your child to get accustomed to a mainstream school setting.
Okay. Another one is, I told my friends that my child has ASD. I feel like I'm getting shunned by them, even though they don't say it. They are always looking at my child weirdly when we go out together. How do I cope with this?
For me personally, what I would do is that I would bring my, if it's my child, or like for in this case my older brother, I would actually try and bring my brother out more with my friends so that they get a bit more adapted as well, because I feel that we are part of society, and that we should be advocating for them as well, as much as they are our friends. We should teach them as well and guide them that, hey, you know, my brother has autism and it's okay, I'm still going to bring him out. Whether he's going to act weirdly or not, I'm still going to bring him out, because end of the day, he is still my brother and I'm advocating for him. Yeah.
Okay, next question. As a caregiver, how can I better discuss puberty with my brother who has ASD?
Okay, so with regards to puberty, I think what my parents did was that I think it started out in school first. So in school, because my brother is a bit on the lower end on the spectrum, so what they did was that there were visual prompts for him to guide him as well. So for him, he was guided by the teachers, and then the teachers would actually teach my parents on how to follow through with it. So I would suggest that trying to discuss it with your teachers or therapists first before trying to do it on your own, because I think they have a better perspective as well on how to do it.
Okay. Okay. Oh, there's one more question. At what age did the puberty issue arise?
I think for my brother, it started at around 12 onwards. So usually they start to preempt the child already. So I think at 12 they started it already with regards to the prompts and all.
Okay. Okay. That's the bell. I think we have time for one last question. So anyone has any pressing questions, please feel free to type them into the box. Yes. Okay, there's one more. Does your brother have any close friends?
Yes, he does actually. So he used to go to this adult center at Sunlove, and one of his close friends' name is Nicholas, and he would always mumble his name when he comes back home. And he was very close with Nicholas as well when they went out. After the center kind of closed down due to funding issues, we still met up. So we still find time to meet up. We got the contacts, and then they still try to go out as well. Not during the COVID period, of course, but I think before that we brought them out for like shopping, and he enjoyed his company in his own ways as well. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Okay, so I think we're done with our last question. Okay, so due to time constraints, we will now move on. So we will now be taking a quick 5 minutes break. So do take this time to do some stretches, visit the washroom, or grab some food and drinks if necessary. Do join us again at 10:45, and we'll see you then.
I hope everyone's back for the sharing of the second topic. Now I'll be inviting the second speaker, Yi Zhuang. Yi Zhuang, may you please unmute yourself, turn on the camera, and share your screen.
Hi everyone, thanks Renling. I'm Yi Zhuang from Healis. Welcome back to the second round of the presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So just now, Kara identified the symptoms of caregiver burnout. So you know if you're having a burnout. So Kara also talked about the different ways to care for ourselves as caregivers. So there's also another way to reduce caregiver stress, and that is by finding the right intervention program for your child. So actually what we are trying to suggest here is that you don't have to do everything alone. So just like sometimes you know, we have a cough that doesn't go away and we seek the right doctor for help and it just go away immediately. So of course we need to find the right doctor. So firstly, just let me define what early intervention means. So early here refers to intervention during the first 7 years of a child's life. So mainly we are looking at 2 years old to 7 years old. So why is it so crucial to start early? Because that is where our brains are forming connections. So those connections that are used more often will get stronger. So while those that are not will die away. So that's why we see that brains are most malleable before age 7, which is what you might have heard before, the critical period. So and when we are talking about connections, we are referring to the neural network. And we are referring to the behaviors, skills, and habits that the child's engaging in. So in order for the connections to strengthen, the child engage in that behavior a lot. So for the connection to die off, then they don't engage in that behavior. So so we know that, you know, if we need to create good habits and cultivate good behaviors, we need to do it young. But imagine the bad behaviors that are not corrected while they're still young. So bad behaviors such as being very rigid. So we do have a client whereby, you know, he learns spelling in a certain order and he sticks to it. So when the teacher gives spelling in a random order, the child gets really upset and then he would start attacking everyone around him. So or you know, a child that, you know, is used to taking a certain route to school, and when it's raining, he needs to take another route that's sheltered. He refused and then he will get into a meltdown. So you can see how these behaviors is going to affect the daily living of the child. And it's something that we need to start shaping while they're young. Because if we don't do so, the connections become stronger and it will be much more difficult to correct it. But when we do it, if we are able to identify them identify them early, so when their connections are still weak, we will be able to break them easily. So you can imagine a Play-Doh, our brain like a Play-Doh. So at the start, it's really easy to mold it into any shape because it's still soft. But you try leaving it there for some time, it becomes much more difficult to change its shape because it has hardened. Sometimes it might even break apart. So that's the same for for children as well. So now we know what early intervention means. We are going to look at the 3 common types of programs out there that you can look at for your child. So the first one will be educational program. So mainly educational program will focus on improving academic skills such as, you know, math, English, reading, spelling, completing worksheets, writing, and so on. So educational program is recommended if, let's say, your child does not have any other behaviors such as, you know, not being able to attend to group instructions, not able to sit for long, he does not have aggressive behaviors, he's able to interact with his peers. So if he does not have all these other struggles, educational program will be the right program for your child. So the next therapy program will be speech and occupational. So I put them together because usually they come together. So speech therapy will focus on improving speech skills. So learning how to produce speech vocalizations, learning words and sentences. While occupational therapy focuses on, you know, functional skills such as learning how to grip a pencil and to write, and also like how to cope with sensory issues. So many children with autism, they have they steam. So steaming is a stimulatory behavior that the child engages in order to regulate themselves. So occupational therapy, they provide a form of sensory regulation. For example, if the child has a lot of energy inside him and he needs to release it, at the occupational therapy center, you will see trampolines, you will see like obstacle course for the child to, work on it. And then also they work on gross motor and so on. And then lastly, we move on to behavior intervention program. So also called ABA program, which is applied behavior analysis. So different ABA programs, they work differently. So we are going to talk about the Healis ABA program because that's what we understand the best. So at Healis, our ABA program will emphasize on establishing behaviors that are desirable for lifelong learning. So behaviors we are looking at, being able to sit for long, being able to attend to instructions, being cooperative. So cooperation is a big issue for many children, even with neurotypical children. So they are able to cooperate with the teachers and they are motivated to learn. So these are the behaviors that we try to establish. So moving on, we are going to dive in, we are going to talk more about the ABA program at Healis. So we have three main goals. The first one will be preparing the child for school. So we cover 25 different areas of skills, which includes communication skill, like communicating wants, speech skills, social skills, self-help skills, academic skills. So of course, we don't work on everything at the same time. Usually we have initial assessment and then we have IEP program to focus on what we should prioritize first. And then the second goal will be preparing the child for life. So character building. We try to teach the child empathy, understanding how others are thinking and feeling, kindness and manners. So the last one will be, we also want to promote mental wellness. So we want to encourage the child to pursue their own passions and interests. And at the same time, we want to help them build a better self-esteem. So we are going to talk more about each category. So some of the skills under each category. So for school, I think the most important one will be communication skills. For example, asking a teacher a question, raising his hand and asking questions, getting permission to go to a restroom, borrowing a pencil from a friend. So all this require the ability to make requests, which we call it mending. So mending is requesting. So for example, in our session, what we do is we contrive situations. For example, a child likes to draw. That's something that's very reinforcing for the child. So we might give a paper without giving a pencil. And this is where we can actually teach the child to mend, to request for something that is actually not reinforcing at the start, which is the pencil. So we give the paper without pencil and say, hey, let's draw an apple. So at this point of time, the child is really motivated to draw an apple because she loves drawing, but she does not have a pencil. But here we'll teach the child to say, hey, like for example, teacher Kara, I want pencil. So that's how we teach the child to request for missing items. So second part will be receptive language. So receptive language, which means following instructions and then doing an action. So receptive language does not require a verbal response, but it's more of like following instructions and doing an action. So this is very, very important in school. So the child have to be able to attend to group instructions, to understand, he needs to wait during transitions, like, between periods. And then also routines, like what's the first thing that you do when you arrive at school? Assembly, and then lining up, and then going to classrooms. So the last area we're going to talk about is social skills. So being able to initiate interaction with others in school. So in order to do that, the child must in the first place know how to get the attention of the other person. So in a one-on-one session, what we do is we will teach the child how to tap the shoulders of others to get attention. And if the child is verbal, we'll teach the child how to address the person by name. Yeah, so also reading non-verbal cues. So non-verbal cues such as, facial expression, whether the other person is actually showing eye contact. So when the person shows eye contact, means that the person is attending to you. So is your child able to read all these non-verbal cues? And then intraverbal skills, we're referring to conversational skills, such as, being able to provide personal information when asked, hey, what's your name? And then, when's your birthday? Or questions like, hey, what are we gonna eat for during recess later? So these are the skills that we are gonna teach the child in our session. So moving on to, how to prepare the child for life. So the first thing is we want to teach the child empathy. And when we say empathy, it's we are referring to the ability to understand their own thoughts and emotions, and also how others are thinking and feeling. So the very, very first step is to establish eye contact. Because if the child does not even look at others, the child is missing out a lot of information that other people are providing, such as, if is the person angry, is the person talking to me, and why is the person talking? So once we try to establish eye contact, the next thing is we try to establish joint attention. So joint attention refers to, for example, if the child is looking at you and you are looking at something else or someone, the child should understand that you are attending to something else or somebody else. So that is joint attention. So, and also like understanding what's happening in the surrounding, and also how to respond appropriately in situations. So, having the empathy will also help the child to understand that, hey, for example, the child shows eye contact and starts attending to others, and he understands that the person is in an ongoing conversation. I should not interrupt, because if I interrupt, both of them are gonna be upset, and that's not very nice. So this is empathy. And also, for example, which is a behavior that is commonly observed in many children with autism, is that or children with social deficits, is that they will talk to someone that's actually not attending to them, that is not even interested in what they're saying, but they'll just continue saying it because they did not understand that if the child is not looking at them, if the child is not even facing them, means that person is not even interested in what they are saying. So they don't understand that, and they'll continue talking. So these are some of the things that we will teach the child. So alongside with that, we also want to teach the child like proper manners, just like any other child, right? Manners have to be taught. If you don't teach them, then they don't learn it. So once the child, has good receptive language and is verbal, we'll start to teach the child how to use polite words such as may I, excuse me, please, and thank you. So, and also we want to teach the child that they're not supposed to inflict pain on themselves and also on others. So even if they're children with autism, they have sensory issues, they might have meltdown, it's possible to teach them that, they're not supposed to hit others. So they might have special needs, but they do not have special privileges to inflict pain on others. So it's okay to be angry, to be upset, but it's not okay to hurt others. So lastly, kindness. So little acts of kindness can be taught to these children with developmental delays. So simple things such as, helping to tidy up and, even bringing mommy a cup of water, and then getting them to attend to how, people react when they engage in these little acts of kindness. So the last part will be mental wellness. So, it's very important for every one of us, including children with individuals with developmental conditions delays, to also have passions and interests. It's not just about therapy sessions all the time, because we don't just live to survive. We want to live a happy life. We want to enjoy our life. So it's the same for them. So we have to remember that we need to provide them with some space and freedom to pursue their own passions. So for us, as long as their interest is not harming themselves or others, we'll encourage them to engage in it. So the next part will be self-esteem. So all of us struggle with self-esteem issues at a certain point of our lives. So, but with children with autism, it's a bit different, because sometimes it's due to the fact that they like control, they like the sense of security, and they hate committing mistakes. So they will try their best to not make any error at all in their life. So the only way to do that is to stick to the same things. I'm gonna stick to the same chair, the same routine, same food, because it feels familiar, it makes me feel safe. So they think that making mistakes is actually bad. So what we can do is to expose them to failures early, and then to kind of associate them with more positive experience when they're committing a mistake. And then also how to, in a way, how to perceive mistakes as well. It's not something bad. It's actually necessary for them to learn. And then also because they can be very literal. So as I said just now, that they're not very good at interpreting nonverbal cues. So sometimes they are not good with, tone of expression. They're not good with sarcasm. They're not good with humor. So they might interpret things differently, and maybe their peers are not going to respond very nicely to them. And also they might have very strange, or I would say interests that are very different from all of us. So this will result in a lot of peer rejection, which will affect their self-esteem. So this is where we come in as a therapist, as an adult, to let them know that sometimes when they're rejected by their peers, it's not necessarily their fault. We are all just different, and if others don't accept them for who they are, it's not their fault. So lastly, freedom of expression. So many of them, they feel that negative feelings and thoughts are wrong. So for example, I do have a client who avoid watching Lion King from Disney, Lion King, because there are scenes whereby it upsets him. For example, the daddy dying and all that. So but it shows that he has the ability to actually empathize. But what's lacking in him is understanding that it's okay to actually feel sad. It's actually good to actually be able to feel what others feel. So some of them, they do struggle with this, whereby they try to hide all their emotions, which will eventually lead to an outburst, sometimes like a meltdown, because they have been suppressing how they feel and they don't acknowledge it. So our role as a therapist is to educate them, to teach them that it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel upset, and what is an appropriate way to actually cope with it. Talk to mommy about it, acknowledging that I'm upset and talking about it. So also teaching them critical thinking skills to resolve problems and conflicts, which is also what we teach neurotypical children as well. Like for example, sharing of toys, having conflicts with friends. I want to play during recess and I want to eat during recess. So what should you do about that? Or certain things like what we are supposed to think and what we are supposed to see. Sometimes there are certain things that it's okay that we think about it, but we shouldn't be saying it. So things like that. So a last overview of the different types of intervention program out there. So the first one, educational program, if your child requires academic help, but your child does not have other behavioral issues. So speech and occupational therapy, meaning if you want to focus on speech and functional skills. But of course, it's good to find out like whether your speech delays or your skills are affected by behavior issues. So last one, which is ABA program, whereby we try to increase good behaviors and decrease negative behaviors. So before we move to our Q&A session, just a last conclusion is that caregivers have a very, very tough job, and sometimes it's just difficult to manage everything on your own, and you don't have to do it alone. Sometimes getting a professional to help and delegating like different roles, right? So for example, when the therapist comes for session, trust the therapist, and that's where you can actually take a break, which is very important, which is what Kara mentioned just now. Taking a break, focusing on yourself, because if you're not well, you won't be able to take care of your child. So of course, there are also things that the therapist cannot do. That's where we need the caregivers to come in. For example, updating us on what's going on outside the session, or like maybe there are certain things like what Kara said, increasing eye contact. As parents, you will have more opportunities to practice with the child on a daily basis. So these are things that you can help the therapist to enhance the results. So that would be the end of my presentation, and now is Q&A time. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, Yi Zhuang. Okay, so now we'll move on to the Q&A segment. To ask a question, once again, you may click on the Q&A toolbox found on the toolbar below. Key in your questions, and this can be viewed by other participants as well. Okay, so do be rest assured that even though we might have some time constraints, our speakers will do their very best to answer as many questions as possible. So moving on to the first question. So what is the difference between occupational therapists and therapists at Healis Autism Center?
Okay, so occupational therapists, they usually don't deal with behaviors. So for example, if let's say the child is having problems attending to instructions, which is receptive language, most of the time the occupational therapist does not work on it. Or for example, aggressive behaviors or meltdowns, or the child being non-compliant, so the child doesn't want to cooperate. So these are behaviors that usually speech or occupational therapists they will not deal with. So that's where like they might get help from a behavior therapist. So at Healis, all behavior therapists. So that's where we work together. So for us, we try to improve their behavior issues so that they can attend better at occupational therapy. Although like some of the things they are overlap, for example, gross motor and functional skills such as academic skills. So there are a lot of things that a behavior therapist at Healis also do. But sometimes for some clients, if they have additional needs, for example, really weak in their muscle, that's where they should have additional occupational therapy. So or like they struggle with producing vocal sounds, whereby they have difficulty actually controlling their oral muscles. So additional speech therapy will help. Although we also do echo waves, which is vocal imitation. We also work on speech.
All right, thank you. Okay, so next question. Hi, is there anything I can do at home to promote these skills?
To promote the skills?
I think they are referring to the skills that you shared during this presentation.
So usually our therapists will be recommending and advising one at a time, because we do need to understand that we have to focus on one behavior at a time. So for example, eye contact, which is something that many parents would be able to do it at home, and it's very important. It's a very important skill. So something that you can do is finding something that your child likes, and then before us, so getting your child to attend. So firstly, it has to be something that your child really wants at that point of time. It can be a gummy, for example. So holding the gummy near your face, and then you might call his name. So for example, Braden, and then just wait for your child to look. So usually they will always look at the thing that they want. You can even at the start, move yourself lower so that they can see what you're holding. So once they see it, because it's very near your face, you are actually pairing this gummy, which is the reinforcer that he will show eye contact to your face. So when you do this enough, every time you call his name, he will get used to looking at your face, even if there's no reinforcer, because it's already conditioned that way. So, but of course, there are other skills that parents can also be involved in improving. So, our therapists will be, according to what the child's working on during the session, they will advise when they see the parent, or they'll communicate with the parents. Hey, maybe we can try to work on this skill for a week, and then let's monitor and see whether the child improves after a week. And then a week later, we will see, what's the next level, what's the next behavior that we can target on. So it's advisable not to do everything at one go, like social skills, speech skills, or I want to improve this. So it's good to talk to your therapist, what is one thing that I can work on right now.
Right. Okay, so moving on to the next question. I heard ABA is painful for the child. How true is this?
It's painful, is it?
Painful.
So yeah, so actually different ABA centers, they actually deliver the program differently. So I will not be able to advise on that, but currently we do not have any clients who say that it's painful for the child. The way we deliver it, the very main focus that we have is to make sure that the child loves the session. The child actually likes the therapist and look forward to the session. So the very first thing that we try to establish is a very positive experience with the session and the therapist and the therapy session itself. So it shouldn't be painful at all. So of course, sometimes when we're dealing with certain behaviors, it might seem that the child is in pain. For example, if the child's really uncooperative, to the extent that he's defiant and is affecting his skills, he's not learning anything because he just refused to give in. So that's where we might be a bit firm. So every time, sometimes when a behavior extinguishes, which is when a behavior disappears, it might escalate. So the child might fight it or resist it, might try his very best to not give in. But on our side, we know that this is a process that he has to go through. So once we stay firm and let the child understand that, hey, this is not the right way to communicate, and you have to follow instructions. Once you follow, and then we can have fun. So usually there will be situations where the child might be crying, but the child shouldn't be in pain.
Okay, moving on to the next question. What are some useful questions I should be asking my teacher's child?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again? What question should I be asking?
It's just that I have a question. What are some useful questions I should be asking my child teacher?
Child's teacher, is it? Oh, okay. So I think mainly some of for example, some of the behaviors or disruptive behaviors that are observed in school. So what we usually get is the teacher will be complaining, hey, your child is spacing out, your child is not following instructions. What we can ask is that, so in what kind of situation, what kind of situation is the child having this behavior? And then what did the teachers do when the child is having this behavior, and how did the child respond to it? Yeah, so this will give good information, and then you can actually pass this information to your therapist, or even if even better, if the school is able to provide videos, so the therapist and the team can actually observe the child when he's in school. So if, let's say, he's really having, so maybe if the teacher is really struggling to deal with some of the behavior issues in school, there are shadowing services. So we provide that as well, whereby the therapist will follow the child to school, and then to work with teachers, and so that the child can learn how to follow instructions, and the teachers can know how to respond when the child's behaving in a certain manner.
Okay, moving on to the next question. What if my boy, does not feel keen on explaining his troubles in school? How can I get him to open up?
Yeah, so this is actually we get this question quite a lot, and sometimes, and most of the time, I'm not sure if it's for your case, but most of the times, because firstly the child does not understand the question. So if your child is on the spectrum, like having ASD or autism, so sometimes most of them, they are very bad with open-ended questions or providing open-ended answer. So they are very good with facts, with facts. If you give them a question whereby they need to describe what's happening, sometimes they struggle with that. So if that's the issue, then you can feedback to your therapist to work on firstly, so what we call introvocals. So the ability to actually understand question and to answer the question properly from, based on the knowledge that they have. So, and also to work on the ability to describe events, to recall and to describe events. So that might help. So of course, it might be possible that your child is not motivated to actually speak to you. So in that case, which is usually the rarer case, where you can try to motivate your child with something that he likes. Just letting him know that, hey, in a very indirect, a very natural way. Hey, we are gonna have your favorite pizza today. Or before we eat your pizza, do you think you can tell me what happened in school? Something like that. So letting the child know that, something that he likes is about to happen. And life is gonna be good soon. But before that, can you please tell me what happened in school? So I think that might be something that you can try.
All right, moving on. May I know how to better understand my child's emotions? Like, how do I know what she's angry about?
So usually we will need, so what we do is, as behavior therapists, we need to find out when the behavior is occurring, and try to find out the trigger. So the trigger and or any intentions that the child has, or anything that always precedes before the behavior happens. And then what's the consequence, right? So for example, if the child is always throwing a tantrums, always crying and not speaking, that's because the child has been reinforced to cry or to throw a tantrum. It might be because of that. That's why he continues to do it, because every time he cries, he gets what he wants. So he learned that this is the way to get what I want, to communicate my wants. So it might be also, for example, even the same behavior like crying, it might be because it's a sensory meltdown. So behaviors can be pretty complicated, and what I would advise you to do is, if let's say you can't figure it out on your own, firstly you can actually find a professional to observe, and then because they are trained to do so, and they have seen so many different profiles, so right away they are able to tell you, like, why is he struggling with that. Sometimes the reason might be much more complicated than you think. It might be something that the child is struggling. It's not the child, doing it on purpose. So another thing is that you can look up on resources online, which is what we also have, like free articles and strategies that might help you understand and help you identify some symptoms that your child is having, some behaviors and tips to actually cope with it. So you can actually head onto our social media, our website, or Facebook or Instagram to actually find out more.
All right. Okay. Next question. My child tends to get aggressive onto himself when he makes mistakes. It makes me upset to see him slapping himself, and no matter how much I try to comfort him, he still shows such behaviors. How do I help him to understand that it's okay to make mistakes?
So what we usually do is that we try to anticipate. So we kind of contrive the situation, which what we do is that we intentionally create a situation where we know that the child's going to be upset. And there are a few ways that we can go about doing this. The first thing that we can do is that maybe a certain task that we know that he always makes mistake. And then we are going to maybe show him visually, depending on the level of the child. So we can show him visually that, hey, if let's say later you can finish this task calmly. So of course the child must know what's calmly. If the child doesn't know, then we need to teach the child separately. So assuming the child knows what is being calm, means not crying, means not hitting, means hands quiet and all that. So if we can finish the task calmly, and then we are gonna ... So this ... is gonna be something that's very, very reinforcing for the child. It's gonna in any situation make the child very happy. So in the first place, before even diving into the task that is the stressful task, we already kind of let the child know that, hey, there's something that you can look forward to. So we kind of move the focus away from the stress that the task is giving him. And then of course we try to keep the task very short and very manageable, or we can even make the task really easy, and then get through it and then quickly deliver the reinforcer. So this has been quite effective with many children.
All right. So next question, how do I know what kind of therapist my child needs?
So there are basically three different types. So it depends on what. So you observe your child, and you also can reach out to these the different providers and organizations. Usually they will do an initial assessment. So at Healis, we also do the initial assessment, whereby the consultant will head down to your place, and then we assess the skills and observe the behaviors of your child. So during the assessment, we will be able to discuss with you, if our program will benefit your child, and what are the struggles that your child is having, and what our program can do to help your child. So, but in general, if let's say your child is showing difficult, challenging behaviors, then definitely your child will need behavioral intervention. So, for example, even stimming, locking, hyperactivity, not attending to instructions, spacing out, not being able to sit, not being able to follow instructions. These are behavioral issues. Not requesting even though he has words. So all these are behavioral issues. But if let's say your child does not have behavioral issues, just that, he struggles, he just cannot learn spelling very well, he cannot learn math very well, that's where he needs educational therapy. And then if let's say he's just having his speech isn't very clear, but he's in general a very no other challenging behaviors, he's cooperative, he follows instruction, no problem with attending to tasks, but he doesn't speak very clearly. That's where you should go for a speech therapy. And then occupational therapy is more of like, if let's say it's just a certain area, like for example, gross motor, your child's not able to walk properly, or you know, your child, it's all good but not able to hold a pencil, very weak muscles, or you know, your child is very, very hyperactive, or you know, your child has a lot of sensory issues where you can seek help from occupational therapy.
Next question. How long does my son need to be on educational ST, OT, and ABA program? Can a child graduate from these programs? Does Healis offer ST/OT and educational program?
So the length of the therapy depends on firstly your profile, the child's profile. So because every child's different, so we need to actually measure like the different levels that your child's currently at, and then secondly also depend on your needs as well. So what kind of support do you need and for how long? So for example, we have clients coming to us who need support for academic skills. So then we will provide this support even throughout primary school. So, but there are other clients who, you know, they are looking more of like communications, support for communication. So improving communication skills, but academic wise, they do not need this support. So once we are able to teach the child how to communicate properly on his own, then usually they can graduate from the program. So what's the other question again? The second part of the question.
So the other question is, does Healis offer ST, OT, and educational programs?
Yeah, so our program is called Behavioral Intervention Program, ABA program. So we don't so although we do cover areas that the ST, OT, and educational therapies cover as well, but we don't call that ST program or what. That's because the approach that we are taking, so the method that we are using is the behavioral approach. So for example, in a session, so the difference is that you go to ST, they work on speech, right? So you go to occupational therapy, they work on functional skills. So it's quite specialized, but for us, is in a session, we work on all forms of behavior. So whenever the child is showing a certain behavior, as a behavior therapist, we will analyze if this behavior is desirable or not. If it's desirable, we reinforce it. If it's undesirable, we decrease it. So if the child is having sensory issues, which is, so we will at that point of time, we will be able to correct the behavior. So provide the kind of intervention to either decrease this behavior or increase this behavior, or speech communication skills. So if let's say the child is verbally requesting for something, of course we want to reinforce that behavior. So that's where we'll reinforce that behavior. So if the child is not, then we will teach the child how to increase this behavior. So in a way that in a ABA program, in an ABA session, we cover everything. So because for us, we feel that sometimes, for example, if you are going to a speech therapy, there might be other behaviors that will surface. So that will be something that a behavior therapist can manage. So it depends on the speech therapists as well. Some speech therapists, they are trained to manage behaviors. But so if let's say your child has a lot of behaviors, he goes to speech therapy. If he has other behaviors, then speech therapy might not be able to do it. So so to answer the question, we cover areas that the other therapists work on as well. It's just that our approach is different.
All right. Okay. So next question. My child is still waiting for early intervention program enrollment. Is there any good suggestion, recommendation for us to help him during this waiting period?
So if you're applying for an intervention program, especially a government one, from what I know, the waiting period sometimes is like 6 months to a year. So actually, it depending on your child. So you might want to seek professional help during this period, because as I said, why we don't want to miss out on this critical period, right? Because the brain is still, it's the easiest when the child is between 2 to 7. In fact, the best time is from 2 to 4. So that's where the child is able to pick up skills very quickly, and it's also very easy to actually reduce all the behaviors that are not desirable. So 6 months, if let's say the waiting time is 6 months to 9 months, that's a long waiting time. So we don't want to waste that. So you might want to seek other forms of intervention that's right for your child, which you can just start right immediately. If let's say your waiting time is it's not that long, things like increasing eye contact if your child's not having, and building rapport with your child. So I think one thing that every parent can do is to build rapport with your child. Really getting interested in what they're interested in. It can be strange. It can be looking at the wheels of the car. It can be just flapping something, right? So I think as a parent, instead of telling them no, we can try to build rapport by just not judge first, but just observing why they are so interested in that. Yes, because we do have some clients who really like looking at the wheels, and eventually when they're able to verbalize, we realize that they're just very interested in the mechanics of how the wheels roll and then how it gets the whole vehicle moving. So that's not something bad. It's just that we didn't understand at the start. So I think building rapport is something that you want to start. So if let's say behaviors are really not manageable, you might want to seek help from a professional to get an initial assessment done.
Okay, so now we only have time for one more question. Okay, so the question is, just now you showed the early intervention is for ages 0 to 7 years old. What is the recommendation for kids age 7 onwards?
So for us, right, even for, we do have clients who are beyond that age as well. So what we do is we'll still do the initial assessment and see if our program is going to benefit the child. So although it's not exactly, it's beyond 7 years old already, but sometimes our program is still able to help the child. So if there are certain areas of skills that we work on and the child is still lacking, that's something that we can still provide services. So we do have clients who are 15 years old who have all other skills, but they really struggle with intraverbal skills or social skills. So we are still working with them, and they are still showing results. So of course, when as the child gets older, the progress is slower. So once beyond 7 years old, it's just much slower. But I think there's always hope. So having progress, even if it's a little bit, it's better than no progress at all. So I think even at age 15, you should not give up hope on the child. So so usually what we do for Healis is that we will still do an initial assessment and see whether our program can help. But of course, there are other programs out there which Kara's brother was having as well, like vocational programs. So those programs work on more on vocational skills. So there might be other programs suitable for children who are a bit older.
All right. Okay. So we're done with the Q&A. Thank you so much, Yi Zhuang, for answering all those questions. Thank you, everyone, for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking your time off on a Saturday morning. Here are some links to our social media platforms. So do follow us to receive timely updates for the next event, or drop us an email for any inquiries. We hope that you have gained much valuable knowledge and have enjoyed yourself today. The second part of this seminar will be on the 22nd August, next Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. If you would like to join us in the next part of the seminar on acknowledging autism for life, do sign up through the QR code or the link that will be sent through the chat box. Before we end off, please help us to fill out a short feedback form by scanning the QR code or clicking on another link that has been sent through the chat box. Hope to see you next week and have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.